The firefighter's heart pounded as he pushed forward into the thunderous chaos. A scream pierced the air, shrill and desperate, rooting him firmly in the urgency of his mission. Flames surged across the ceiling, licking at the worn beams with greedy tongues, showering sparks like fiery rain. The roar of the fire was relentless, a beastly bellow that drowned out every sound but the insistent wail of the alarm. His protective gear, though resilient, felt like nothing more than paper armor against the suffocating heat. He moved with purpose, a figure clad in heavy, soot-marked canvas, his eyes scanning the smoke-choked corridor for any sign of life. The acrid taste of smoke was imbued in every breath, but he pressed forward, driven by the echo of the scream threading through the relentless roar. Rounding a corner, the firefighter caught sight of the child, small, terrified, under a protective table shielded from the falling debris. The boy's eyes, wide with fear, met his, and for a split second, trust bridged the oppressive heat and chaos. The firefighter crouched low, making himself as small as possible while his voice cut through the turmoil, a calm assurance that carried a promise of safety. "I'm here to get you out," he said, extending a gloved hand into the tight space. The boy hesitated, his tiny frame shaking with visible tremors, before clutching at the offered hand. In that moment of connection, the firefighter drew strength, shoving doubt aside as he worked to navigate back through the inferno. Each step was a calculated risk, debris crackling beneath his boots, as time seemed to stretch, every second pulsating to the beat of his heart and the relentless advance of the flames. They moved together, the firefighter carrying the child with steady arms, wrapping his heat-resistant jacket around the boy to shield him from the brunt of the blaze. The world around them flickered in shades of orange and red, shadows lengthening ominously with each flicker of light. Yet, through the maze of fire and smoke, a singular goal beaconed him forward, the narrow frame of the door leading back to the world outside, to safety, to life. The scene outside the apartment building was a symphony of controlled chaos, a cacophony of sirens echoing through the narrow city streets, each wail bouncing off the brick facades with an urgency that set nerves on edge. Flashing red and white lights bathed the scene in rhythmic pulses, casting stark shadows that darted across the faces of onlookers and responders alike. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke mingling with the sharper scent of adrenaline-fueled sweat, creating an atmosphere charged with tension and anticipation. Fire hoses snaked across the pavement like giant serpents, gushing torrents of water towards the flames that angrily clawed at the building's exterior. Firefighters, clad in bulky gear, moved with efficient purpose, their movements a ballet of precision underpinned by the desperate urgency of their task. The crackling of the walkie-talkies mixed with shouted commands, forming a backdrop against which the life and death drama unraveled. In the midst of it all, the sheer heat radiated outward, tangible and oppressive even at a distance, pressing down on anyone within reach of its grasp. Inside, the firefighter and the child emerged from the smoky interior, stepping into the blinding brightness of the outside world as though breaching another realm. There was a moment, just a heartbeat, where sound seemed to suspend, a triumphant pause before reality flooded back in, renewing its relentless tempo. Medics rushed forward, their uniforms crisp against the backdrop of chaos, swiftly assessing the boy who clung to the firefighter with wide, tear-streaked eyes. The firefighter, meanwhile, still vivid with the lingering sensations of the inferno's fierce grip, paused only to take a breath deep enough to taste the crystalline relief of fresh air. Around him, the chaotic dance continued unabated, a testament to the ever-present cycle of emergency and response. Despite the tumult, there was an unspoken understanding among all present, a shared nod of accomplishment as another life was pulled from the jaws of disaster. The scene was frenetic yet intimate, a vivid tableau set against the everyday backdrop of a city caught in a moment of extraordinary exigence. The sights and sounds, overwhelming and immediate, painted not just a story of survival, but one of the indomitable spirit that rises in defiance amidst adversity. The scene unfolded in rapid snapshots, each moment more disjointed than the last, intensifying the tension that gripped the heart of the crisis. In one snapshot, jagged shards of glass lay scattered across the sidewalk, glinting ominously under the fire truck's pulsating lights. Nearby, a child's discarded shoe sat incongruously amid the debris, its presence a silent testament to the hurried flight from danger. A plume of black smoke curled into the night sky, morphing with each passing second, a dark signal that silhouetted the frantic movements below. Faces flashed in and out of view, twisted into masks of anxiety and resolve, their expressions briefly illuminated before being swallowed back into the shadows. The sound of splintering wood echoed sharply, followed by a heavy thud that seemed to reverberate through the very core of the street, an audible reminder of the building's fragility and impending collapse. Amidst it all, the smell of charred timber permeated the air, clinging to clothes and skin, a lingering emblem of the fire's savage path. Within this fragmented mosaic, the firefighter appeared, a solitary figure against the chaotic tableau, moving with purpose yet haunted by the uncertainties that each new second brought. His hands, coated in a thin veil of ash, reached for something unseen, an invisible anchor in the midst of disorder. His eyes, though shielded by the reflective visor of his helmet, hinted at the flickering shadows of doubt and determination waging their own battle. The muted crackle of his radio punctuated the tumult with bursts of coded urgency, fragments of instructions that seemed both distant and immediate. A brief lull in the activity seized the scene, the lull filled with unspoken questions that hung in the charged air. Who else was trapped? Were they in time? What dangerous twist would the fire take next? Each question fed the tension, a gnawing presence that refused to be ignored even as the world raced on. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there was a raw, unyielding grit that underscored every action, as though the fragments, though incomplete, wove together a silent testament to the relentless human spirit that refused to back down in the face of destruction. The firefighter's heart hammered against his ribs with a relentless urgency, a staccato rhythm that matched the escalating chaos surrounding him. Every beat seemed to reverberate through his entire being, a constant reminder of the ticking moments slipping by, each one precious in the race against the blaze. The air was thick and punishing, pressing in on all sides, each inhale an effort, weaving a tapestry of shaky breaths that rasped against lungs already scorched by smoke. With every exhale, a delicate plume of mist formed briefly in the air, only to be dissipated by the insistent heat swirling around him. Sweat trickled down his brow, a salty stream that mingled with soot, teasing the edges of his eyes under the rim of his helmet. The sensation was both a distractor and a reminder of the intense conditions he was operating under, each droplet a testament to his relentless determination to push onward despite the mounting fatigue that gnawed at his muscles. As he navigated through the infernal maze, his fingertips tingled with a heightened awareness, the gloves that protected them barely discernible now, melded into the texture of his skin by the heat. Each crackle of a burning beam or creak of a shifting wall set his pulse skittering anew, a reflexive jolt that resonated down to his very core. His skin, beneath layers of protective gear, felt as if it were alive with the fire's energy, a prickling sensation that danced along his nerves like static electricity. The soles of his boots encountered debris with each step, transmitting the vibrations of destruction up through his legs, grounding him even as the world threatened to unspool into chaos around him. His mouth was dry, parched to a desert-like austerity, as particles of ash danced tantalizingly in each shallow breath, a constant tease against the metallic taste of fear. Yet, amidst these physical trials, there remained an unyielding core within him, a deep-seated resolve that every fiber of his being rallied around, a pledge that neither heat nor exhaustion nor fear would deter his mission to see all to safety, to emerge victorious over the merciless flames that surrounded him. Time was the invisible antagonist in the firefighter's race against the raging inferno, every second ticking away with a taunting persistence that heightened the urgency of the unfolding drama. The echoes of his own breath synced with the distant metronome of a commander's voice on the radio, announcing time remaining until the building's structural integrity was expected to fail. 10 minutes. The countdown hung heavy in the air, each digit marking not just survival but the unyielding dwindling span in which to reach the trapped individuals. As he navigated the twisting corridors, the urgency was palpable, a living, breathing entity riding on his shoulders. Outside, the relentless screech of sirens and the rhythmic pulsing of emergency lights mirrored the ticking clock, reinforcing the imperative of haste. Within this framework of precision and pressure, there was no room for missteps. His every movement was calculated, purposeful, an intricate balance of speed and caution as he traversed the unstable floors that trembled under the fire's assault, threatening to buckle at any given moment. Yet even amidst the pressure of the ticking clock, the firefighter's sharp instincts and training emerged as his closest allies. His mind cycled through possible scenarios, assessing risks with the swift precision honed by experience, creating a mental map of the paths of least resistance. 5 minutes. The numbers rolled over like an unyielding specter, their finality echoing louder with each diminished oxygen tank gauge reading. His steps quickened, muscles protesting against the relentless exertion as the air grew thicker, more laden with the blackened remnants of the fight raging around him. Peering through the swirling haze, he spotted a narrow staircase, its metal frame warped but still viable, a tenuous link between the present predicament and the promise of rescue above. His radio crackled, an oral lifeline assuring him that backup was on the way, providing a dual reminder of both collaboration and the solitary nature of his immediate task. 3 minutes. The finale approached, a crescendo of tension spurring him onward, heart pounding, a stark reminder of lives teetering on the brink, awaiting salvation. In those moments, the urgency no longer felt like an enemy but a forge, distilling his resolve into the purest form of determination as he pushed closer to the trapped, every tick of the clock marked by the dogged persistence of hope. Amidst the raging inferno, time folded back on itself, transporting the firefighter's mind to a serene morning not long past. The scene was an island of calm, framed by the gentle light of dawn spilling through kitchen windows, casting golden patterns on the worn oak table. He sat with his family, the quiet rhythm of daily life undisturbed by the chaos that now consumed him. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the comforting aroma of pancakes sizzling on the griddle, while the distant chirping of birds offered a melodic backdrop that underscored the peace of the moment. His daughter, laughter bubbling forth as syrup dribbled from her fork, spoke animatedly about a school project, her earnestness a warm beacon that anchored his world in certainty and love. The ordinary clink of dishes, a simple symphony of domestic life, filled the space, solidifying it as a sanctuary of tranquility where time was forgiving and abundant. In that past serenity, the world was small but complete, every moment stretched luxuriously as their conversations drifted without urgency. The flashback faded, the present reality crashing back in with an intensity that jerked him from the comforting embrace of memory. He was back in the thick of it, the inferno roaring with a fierceness that demanded all of his attention. Yet, the echo of the peaceful morning lingered at the edges of his consciousness, fueling his resolve to fight through the chaos. It was the promise of returning to moments like those that stoked his inner fire, that sense of normalcy that drove his every step towards ensuring others also got to experience the richness of ordinary days. In the dance of flames and shadows, amidst the heat that seemed to sear the very air, he found strength in the ordinary, for it was the essence of life itself. Each surge of the fire refocused his purpose, urging him to push harder, move faster, and overcome the uncertainty of the moment for the sake of all the quiet, peaceful mornings yet to be savored. It was a vivid testimony to what he was truly fighting for, a life free from relentless urgency, cherished one gentle dawn at a time. Inside the firehouse, the camaraderie among the team was as vital as the equipment they handled every day. The walls of the kitchen were lined with pictures, snapshots of shared victories, challenging calls, and the smiles that bound them through it all. The aroma of sizzling bacon filled the air, a consistent morning ritual for Tony, the self-proclaimed captain of culinary affairs. "It's crispy or nothing," he'd quip, flipping strips with expert precision, a habit that had earned both teasing and admiration from his colleagues. Nearby, Scott and Jamie sat at the table, locked in their customary debate about the merits of extra foam on a proper cappuccino, much to the feigned exasperation of their peers. "It's just coffee, not an art form," Jamie would protest, earning only a mockingly scandalized look from Scott, who took every sip with the reverence of a sommelier evaluating fine wine. Between shifts, laughter was their haven, the balm for their shared burdens. They'd recount the near misses and the humorous mishaps, like the time Frank, the lieutenant and fervent practical joker, replaced their chief's prized ergonomic chair with an office model that unleashed a whoopee cushion chorus upon sitting. The memory drew knowing chuckles, the sound of their mirth mingling seamlessly with the clinking of forks against plates. These moments of light-hearted jest served dual purposes. They were both an escape from the rigors of their calling and a builder of unshakable trust. Even in the seriousness of their mission, where split-second decisions could mean everything, There was an unspoken understanding that these moments of normalcy fortified their ability to perform under pressure. They trained hard, pushing the limits, but balance came from the softer sides of life they shared within the walls of the station, a place where humor, habits, and the ordinary interactions created a tapestry of unity and resolve, binding them into an unbreakable team ready to face whatever the next alarm might bring. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the firehouse grounds, a quiet descended that was only broken by the occasional ring of a distant phone or the soft hum of the television in the lounge. Tony, usually the center of vibrant discussions, sat at the edge of his bunk with a book open on his lap, though his eyes were not on the page. Instead, he found himself watching the play of light and shadow on the opposite wall, thoughts drifting far beyond the room. Outside, the world was painted in hues of purple and deep orange, the transition to night offering a temporary pause from the chaos of their daily duties. But beneath this serene facade, there was a restlessness in his heart. A letter lay on the small desk beside his bed, unopened, its presence a reminder of something unresolved, whispering unspoken concerns that weighed on him. It was from his father, their relationship strained over the years by a series of disagreements that had become too familiar, yet too significant to easily dismiss. The letter symbolized the bridge he wasn't sure he was ready to cross, the words within undoubtedly holding expectations or reconciliation he feared might cut deeper than silence. Nearby, Jamie sat cradling a mug of something warm, her eyes fixed on a sitcom but her laughter absent from the room. Her focus flitted between the humor on-screen and the flicker of her phone's light, lying silent beside her. Though she appeared engaged, acquainted eyes would catch the shadows in her demeanor, hints of deeper introspection etched faintly on her expression. Thoughts of her mother, whose health had become a precarious ballet between stability and decline, tugged persistently at the edges of her consciousness. Each call from the hospital carried the potential to radically shift the balance of her world, a reality she carried with an outward ease expertly maintained amidst her team. Yet, in these quieter moments, the mask slipped slightly, revealing the weight she carried just under the surface. These hidden recesses of emotion, shared in their own silent way by each member of the team, created an invisible thread of connection, a shared understanding that beneath their roles as firefighters, they were simply human, each with concerns and quiet emotions shaping the unseen contours of their daily lives. The stillness of the firehouse was abruptly shattered by the shrill insistence of the alarm, its sound slicing through the air with a clarity that dispelled any lingering remnants of quiet. The previously subdued atmosphere immediately transitioned into a flurry of coordinated activity as firefighters sprang into action, each alert to the choreographed chaos that marked the onset of every response. Tony was on his feet in an instant, the letter forgotten as he reached instinctively for his gear, the familiar weight of duty settling back onto his shoulders. The station's lights flickered to life, bathing the surroundings in a stark illumination that highlighted the determined focus etched onto every face. The radio crackled with the dispatcher's urgent tenor, detailing the location and severity, a 3-alarm fire blazing through an industrial complex on the city's outskirts. The urgency embedded in those words imbued their movements with an electric intensity as they suited up, each piece of gear secured with practiced efficiency that spoke to years of training and shared trust. As Jamie joined the rush to the trucks, the earlier shadows that had lingered across her thoughts were momentarily set aside, overridden by the immediate demands of the unfolding emergency. Stepping up into the cab, she pulled on her headset, the direct line keeping her tethered to the constant stream of information flowing from command. The engine roared to life beneath them, propelling the team into the night, their shared purpose threading through the charged air. The streets flashed by in a blur of color and motion, the city's familiar landmarks now merely silhouettes against the backdrop of flashing lights and ascending smoke columns. Each bump and turn of the route felt visceral, the growing anticipation a visceral companion on their journey. In those moments, all personal concerns faded into the periphery, subsumed by the task at hand. United in purpose, their focus sharpened to a singular aim: lives and spaces to be saved. The call to action had been answered, and in its push, it forged a unity that was ferociously tested yet unfailingly resilient, a testament to their bonds and determination. The air quivered with tension as the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, its urgency slicing through the frenetic energy of the firehouse like a whip crack. Engine 5, Engine 6, respond to a 3-alarm fire. Industrial complex at Westside and 9th. Reports indicate heavy smoke and visible flames, potential hazards of chemical storage on site. Repeat, chemical hazards possible. The dispatcher's steady but pressing tone left no room for ambiguity, each word carefully chosen to convey the severity of the scene awaiting them. As the message echoed in the minds of the firefighters, the station buzzed with the synchronized hum of immediate action. Their practiced routine was unstoppable, a seamless choreography of donning gear, securing helmets, and checking equipment. Tony, his adrenaline surging in time with his focused breathing, listened intently, filing away each critical piece of information, preparing mentally for the unknown elements the call had suggested. In those moments, the thoughts and worries that had lurked in the shadows earlier were obscured by a blanket of purpose driven completely by the urgent call to arms. Inside the fire truck, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Every bump in the road seemed amplified by the thrum of the engine beneath them as they barreled toward the scene. Jamie, seated near the radio, kept her expression neutral as she relayed updates to her team, her voice a bridge between the dispatcher's words and the firefighters' readiness. Command advised backup is 5 minutes behind us. Approach with caution, she transmitted, her calm demeanor a vital anchor amidst the undertow of escalating urgency. The landscape outside transformed into a surreal tapestry of night and illumination, with street lamps flickering against the backdrop of stark, silhouetted buildings. Sirens wailed around them, orchestrating a paradoxical sense of both disarray and unity. There was an unspoken dialogue among the firefighters, communicated through nods, shared glances, and the secure tightening of straps, actions that spoke louder than any words could. Each of them was attuned to the weight of the call, the knowledge that within the confining metal of the truck was a collective spirit sharpened by the call's gravity, bound by the singular objective awaiting them amidst the urgency of smoke, fire, and the unpredictable dangers of the night. As the fire truck neared the scene, the shifting dynamics within it were palpable, a tangible tension unspooling in waves that mirrored the gravity of their mission. Faces that had moments ago been animated with the decisive chatter of strategy and preparation now hardened into masks of focused resolve. Lines of concentration etched deeper in their expressions, eyes narrowed against the anticipatory glare of fire and flashing lights on the horizon. The air was thick, vibrating with the collective silence that fell over them, each firefighter sinking into the solitude of their own thoughts, yet tethered together by the unity of purpose. This was the silent ritual of anticipation, the hushed lull before the surge, where each individual steeled themselves against what was to come. In the shrinking space between anticipation and action, their faces told a story, the weight of responsibility borne quietly, unspoken yet understood. Jamie, usually the team's buoyant voice of humor, reflected this shift more starkly than most. Her gaze was a study in determination, the preliminary lightness absent as she adjusted her gear with nimble fingers, each task a deliberate preparation. Beside her, Tony checked his equipment one final time, the movements methodical, carrying the weight of unwavering diligence. The hum of the engine was a steady undercurrent beneath the silence, punctuated only by the occasional static-laden update filtering through the radio, a stark reminder of the threat that lay ahead. Even as silence enveloped them, there was a poetry to it, punctuated by the rhythm of breath and the soft click of buckles as they fastened securely in place. Outside, the fire loomed closer, shadows playing vividly across the interior of the truck. For each firefighter, the emotional shift signified the transition from thought to action, from potential to reality, as they prepared themselves to meet the inferno with the formidable courage forged in the silent depths of these shared, resolute moments. As the fire truck screeched to a halt at the scene, the firefighters swiftly transitioned from anticipation to action, their movements precise and practiced, akin to a well-rehearsed dance. Each one was a critical part of the machine that was the firefighting unit, moving with a methodical grace that spoke to countless drills and true emergencies faced. The air was dense with the acrid scent of smoke, swirling with an intensity that seemed to blur the night into a canvas of daunting shadows and incandescent flames. But in this chaos, their focus remained unerring. Tony slid from the cab, his boots hitting the pavement with a determined thud, bringing the weight of responsibility firmly onto his shoulders. He immediately began his gear check, helmet secure, gloves tight, breathing apparatus in place. The mask snug over his face was a comforting constraint, each inhalation through the respirator a reminder of the thin line between safety and peril. Nearby, Jamie conducted her own swift series of checks, fingers expertly gliding over buckles and clasps, each movement infused with an insistence on accuracy. She tested the hose connection, feeling the pressure build with a predictable resistance that felt reassuringly normal amidst the unpredictability of the fire. Radios crackled with urgency, voices commuting tactical updates and assignments with clipped efficiency, slicing through the surrounding noise to pinpoint clarity. As Jamie and Tony exchanged a brief nod, the silent acknowledgement carried volumes, a shared understanding anchoring them in the chaos, binding them to the mission. Beneath the glowing embers and the buzzing atmosphere, their gestures were catalogued into muscle memory, instincts supreme as they pivoted into the heart of action. This gear check, a brief but vital interlude, was not just about safety but grounded their reality here and now, readying them for the fight while tethering them to the vital margin where life, survival, and duty intersected. As the firehouse bay doors groaned open, the crisp night air rushed in, mingling with the steady hum of anticipation that had enveloped the firefighters. The truck roared to life, its engine vibrating with purpose, a mechanical beast waiting to be unleashed upon the streets. The sense of transition from readiness to engagement was palpable, a shift in energy as concrete certainty replaced the simmering anticipatory tension. Jamie and Tony settled into their seats, their gear freshly checked, muscles taut with the imminence of action. Around them, the station's familiar sounds faded, subsumed by the urgency embodied in the blare of the horn and the wail of the sirens, a clarion call cutting through the quiet night. The truck jolted forward, with a kinetic force that propelled them from the relative safety of the base into the maelstrom of rescue, each turn and acceleration punctuating the solemnity of the journey from routine order to the disarray of crisis. Lights flashed, painting the interior in rapid strobes of red and white that mirrored the dance of urgency taking place outside. The streets unfurled before them, a corridor fleeting beneath the blur of time and mission, each intersection a checkpoint passed with relentless purpose. Jamie's fingers hovered over the controls, tracking the communication feed, while Tony glanced at the map spread before him, mentally tracing their route alongside the unfolding details. The rhythm of the drive, a hypnotic, lurching pulse, reflected the heartbeat of their determination, streamlined into the singular focus of arrival and impact. Outside, the city bore witness to their procession. Cars yielded, streetlights flickered past, pedestrians paused, their heads turning toward the rush of emergency in a collective, silent acknowledgement. Inside the cab, the conversation was sparse, each word tight with intent, conserving energy for the inevitable. Together, they were a unified force, charging toward the heart of the blaze, prepared to transform the chaos they hurtled toward into hope, anchoring themselves within the clarity of duty that the battlefield of fire demanded of them. The interior of the fire truck was a confined space charged with palpable tension, filled almost to bursting with the knowledge of what lay ahead. Conversation was sparse, words exchanged clipped and direct, each syllable bearing the deliberate weight of necessity rather than embellishment. The heavy atmosphere settled around the crew, their silence a testament to the looming challenges that hung in the air. Jamie glanced at Tony, her eyes meeting his with a brief nod, an unspoken acknowledgement between them. It was a gesture that needed no verbal accompaniment, speaking volumes about mutual trust forged through shared experiences. The gentle hum of the engine was the only constant sound, laying down a tonal backdrop that interlaced with the crackling radio updates, a static-drenched symphony conveying tactical instructions and status updates, each more urgent than the last. The dim glow from the dashboard washed over their determined faces, rendering their features in stark relief, each line and shadow an unwritten line of their ongoing narrative. Around them, the night cityscape flashed by through windows streaked with light rain, the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers adding a quiet, mechanical heartbeat to the moment. As the fire truck navigated the bends and twists en route to the scene, Jamie focused on the comfeed, decrypting it for clarity amidst the crackle. Each transmission reinforced their mission's gravity, their breaths, deliberate and measured, mingled with the vehicle's rhythmic cadence. Tony, meanwhile, reviewed the unfolding situation in his mind, mentally layering the topography of the call with potential hazards and avenues for rapid responses. The air within the vehicle thickened, layered with the urgency of purpose and the silent vows of duty. Every look and breath shared amongst them spoke of the complexity that underlay their simple goal: to save lives. Their resolve was a tangible force in that intimate space, prepared for the calamity awaiting them, their silence, an armor forged from focus and camaraderie. Inside the accelerating fire truck, the crew members' minds began erecting mental maps of the scene that awaited them. As the updated reports filtered through the radio, Tony's imagination spun through a panoply of worst-case scenarios, depicted in vivid, searing detail against the canvas of his focused mind. In his visualization, plumes of thick, acrid smoke billowed skyward from the industrial complex, casting a grim pall over the adjacent neighborhood. Jagged tongues of fire licked up the sides of a warehouse, intensifying in a symphony of heat and fury. The structure, teetering on collapse, housed the ominous threat of hazardous chemicals, and the visual of explosions punctuated his thoughts with stark clarity. Workers trapped within, their silhouette impressions struggling against smoke-stained windows, screamed for rescue. In his mind's eye, the very ground seemed to tremble beneath the impending catastrophe, a chaotic storm of fire and debris that ventured close to the brink of madness. Yet alongside this imagery, Tony anchored himself to the preparation inherent in his training, recalling the precise tactical responses for each potential hazard. Calculations of entry points, routes, and structural weak spots wove seamlessly with the memory of past calls, a necessary duality of imagining danger while mentally rehearsing the measures to counteract it. Across the cab, Jamie was similarly absorbed in her own estimations, envisioning smoke-engulfed corridors in need of venting and isolated hotspots requiring swift extinguishing. Her anticipation was sharp, almost palpable, predicting the discordance of cries swathed in flames and the disarray of overturned shelves that could impede their advance. These shared yet silent scripts of disaster were connected by a thread of understanding. Each was attuned to preempt error and forge a path to triumph in the face of their fears. The spinning wheels of dread were harnessed to feed an unwavering resolve, a focused vortex where worst case transitioned to an actionable plan, each moment drawing them closer to the site, ready for whatever awaited beyond the kaleidoscope of fire-touched shadows. As the fire truck sped through the city streets with its determined urgency, Tony found his mind momentarily wandering to his son back home, the image vivid against the backdrop of sirens and radio static. He remembered the small moments of their mornings together, the tousle of his son's hair, the way his laughter filled the kitchen with sweet innocence, and the feel of small arms wrapping tight around his neck in parting. Instinctively, Tony knew that this mission, like all before it, was not just about saving those in peril at the scene, but also about preserving a world worth returning to, a world where his son grew up safe and unburdened by the shadows that lingered in his father's line of sight. Such thoughts crafted an unbreakable resolve, binding his duty on the ground with a deeply personal mission to preserve the sanctuaries of millions of homes just like his own. The mental image of his boy, face aglow with wonder at the tales of bravery Tony spun as bedtime stories, fortified him against the unknown dangers lurking in the smoke ahead. Across from him, Jamie felt the familiar prickle of emotion as a fleeting image of her sister drifted into focus, a picture frozen in time, snapped during their shared trips to the beach every summer. The lighthearted banter, the comfort of familial bonds under open skies, and the promise of more adventures yet to come served as both anchor and beacon amidst the unpredictability of her career's demands. Jamie understood that these connections underscored the fights she took on at every call, not just for herself, but for the sisters, brothers, and families of those she had not yet met. In the stakes of their shared path, Jamie recognized how her personal memories melded with her professional mission, granting her a sense of agency against the tide of anxiety that threatened to overflow. The recollection of holding her sister's hand as waves crashed at their feet crafted an unspoken vow. Jamie was determined to ensure that others would have the opportunity to grasp such cherished hands, to craft more memories in the sea of life's potential. The resonance of loved ones, deeply intertwined with their resolve, propelled both firefighters forward, forging through fear with souls alight in the remembrance of love. As the fire truck drew closer to its destination, the palpable sense of unity and resolve among the crew intensified, a silent vow woven into the very fabric of their shared mission. Each member carried their own thoughts and fears, but beneath those personal burdens lay an unspoken promise of mutual support and unwavering commitment. The quiet camaraderie was not about spoken declarations but rather about the trust formed through their collective experiences, training, and the countless hours spent side by side. Every nod, every glance exchanged was imbued with meaning, a reassurance that they were not alone but part of a force greater than themselves. As the sirens wailed a haunting refrain, announcing their approach, the firefighters embraced their roles with a unified purpose, ready to face whatever met them in the heart of the inferno. Every step toward the challenge was a step taken in tandem with their brothers and sisters in gear, each stride resonating with the silent rhythms of teamwork and courage. The landscape ahead was a blur of smoke and shadow, flickers of orange illuminating the night like erratic beacons. The fire seemed a living entity, unpredictable and fierce, yet within the crew, there was no uncertainty about their own resolve. Underneath the heavy gear and helmets, faces might be unseen, but the unity was palpable, felt in the shared cadence of their breath, the synchronized rustle of equipment, and the unmistakable harmony of hearts beating collectively toward a common goal. It was a silent symphony of determination, orchestrated by their shared promise to confront the chaos and bring order and rescue to those in its grip. As they neared their destination, the fire truck itself symbolized more than transport. It was a vessel carrying a promise of safety and resolve. The vibrant, silent thread of solidarity woven through their collective consciousness was their guiding flame, a light burning brightly amidst the darkness, ensuring that no matter the individual journey, they faced the storm together. From a distance, the chaotic scene unfurled as an apocalyptic tapestry, every element charged with urgency and chaos. Plumes of dense, black smoke billowed into the sky, a stark column rising defiantly against the night, visible even from miles away. Tendrils of this inky specter curled outward, slowly consuming the skyline and casting everything beneath it in a haze of impending dread. The orange glow from the flames cast the surrounding landscape in shifting shadows, flickering feverishly against the backdrop of the industrial complex. As the fire truck made its final approach, the roar of the blaze was joined by a cacophony of shouts and cries, human voices punctuating the night with notes of fear, desperation, and urgency. The din of car alarms added layers to the symphony of chaos, each honk and blare a testament to the disorder spilling out from the epicenter of the conflagration. Interspersed was the sharp directive of first responders, their calls and commands carving through the air with authoritative precision. Near the perimeter of the chaos, a crowd had gathered, a convergence of worried family members, bystanders, and evacuated workers. Their silhouettes wavered against the fiery backdrop, animated gestures and anxious body language narrating the silent stories of their hopes and fears. Among them, the occasional flash of a reflective safety vest signaled the presence of emergency personnel organizing, guiding, and ushering people to safety and calm. The oppressive heat radiated outward, a tangible force felt even from a distance, alongside the acrid tang of smoke that cut through the senses. Nearby, hoses unfurled like giant serpents, arcing streams of water that seemed momentarily inconsequential against the towering inferno. Yet, in those swirling currents of chaos and confusion, an undercurrent of resolve began to build, a rugged resolve embodied not only by the firefighters but by everyone steeled at the periphery of disaster. The distant chaos, though overwhelming, became the focal point for action, a vivid call to arms amid the sprawling discord of fire and fear. As the fire truck came to a halt, the firefighters disembarked with practiced precision, their movements synchronized by years of training and a shared understanding of the urgency at hand. Each member of the team swiftly fell into their respective roles, the chaos of the scene immediately scanned and dissected through the lens of their expertise. Tony, taking point, surveyed the fiery tableau before them, his eyes sharp and focused despite the smoke that swirled thickly around them. The inferno's source flickered in the building's center, flames greedily climbing toward the roof as they consumed sections of the industrial complex. Nearby, Jamie consulted with the incident commander, gleaning vital information about the chemicals stored on site, their potential volatility mapping out the strategy she expressed to the crew with clipped, clear directions. Seconds mattered, and the air was charged with their collective awareness that quick assessments were the difference between control and catastrophe. With the details rapidly absorbed, the team set about internalizing their plan. They established a perimeter, guided by hastily erected barriers and the guiding flashlights of additional emergency personnel on the scene. Thick smoke continued to billow towards the sky, an ever-changing plume that masked the heart of the danger and necessitated cautious entry. The firefighters moved with focused intent, identifying avenues for direct attack on the fire's core while coordinating efforts to bolster areas at risk of structural collapse. Communication was paramount. Radios buzzed with status updates and directives, the team balancing assertive action with adaptive strategies. Tony and Jamie, flanking the entry, exchanged a final nod of steely determination before disappearing into the building's smoke-veiled threshold. The world around them was a chaotic theater of danger, but with each tactical decision, they transformed knowledge into tenacious effort, driven by the purpose shared among their team: control the flames, safeguard the lives, and resist the fiery menace that sought to redefine the night. The team sprang into action with an almost choreographed precision, their roles manifesting through subtle, familiar cues that needed no elaboration. Tony, decisive and calm, took the lead in orchestrating the attack on the fire's heart, a point man embodying the balance between aggression and caution. With a quick nod, he signaled Scott and Jamie. Scott, a veteran known for his steady hand and quick judgment, coordinated the establishment of the water lines, efficiently guiding the firefighters responsible for ensuring a constant, powerful flow to the men battling the blaze head-on. Jamie, adept at situational awareness, moved to bolster support where structural integrity threatened safety, her eye trained to discern minute shifts that indicated where danger lay in wait beneath the smoke and roaring flames. Each gesture, nod, and glance between them conveyed direction and accord, rendering unnecessary the need for explicit dialogue in the furnace of their collective effort. Elsewhere, Anna and Mike split off toward the building's exterior, tasked with assessing potential points of collapse and controlling crowd movement back to a safe perimeter. Anna's efficient movements marked her as the scout, her experienced eye quickly evaluating which areas were most at risk. Without breaking her stride, she relayed findings to Mike, who interacted with emergency personnel and organized auxiliary tasks. His role seamlessly blended with hers, supplementing her assessments with loud commands that kept onlookers and assets positioned where they needed to be. In the ebb and flow of effort and command, the team wove a web of response that spoke of ingrained trust and practice, every action falling into place within seconds. There was beauty in the implicit orchestration. Individuals bound by a singular mission, each tacitly attuned to the pulse of their operation and each other, manifesting through shared glances, experienced intuition, and an unwavering commitment to the task ahead. Just as the firefighters settled into the rhythm of their coordinated efforts, an unexpected complication arose with the sudden, shattering sound of glass breaking and debris falling. A nearby building, older and structurally challenged by years of neglect, groaned under the fire's relentless assault, sending tremors across the ground that radiated like a warning throughout the entire scene. Tony, who was directing his team, momentarily halted as he registered the new development. The creaking intensified, and before a new plan could be fully articulated, a line of flames erupted from beneath a section of collapsed roof, fueled by unseen accelerants that had become volatile in the rising heat. It was a stark and unpredictable variable that shifted the immediate narrative of the fire from measured containment to dynamic emergency. The roiling plumes of smoke that had once delineated the battle line now shifted chaotically, obscuring vision and sowing brief confusion among the responders. Radios crackled to life with rapid updates, the urgency of voices escalating as the fire was suddenly redefined as an even more aggressive adversary. In response to the unforeseen challenge, Tony urgently recalibrated the team's strategy, instinctively weighing their newfound limitations against the pressing need for action. Jamie, who had been monitoring potential structural weaknesses, quickly initiated a pivot in response, her voice cutting through the chaos as she communicated to divert resources to combat the spreading fire. Scott, positioned by the water lines, rallied the firefighters around him, executing a swift change in tactic to redirect the flow, bolstering areas now vulnerable to the burgeoning threat. As Anna continued her assessment from the perimeter, she coordinated closely with Mike to manage both the crowd and the expanding exclusion zone with precision, mindful not to incite panic while ensuring safety. Their efforts underscored a dynamic interplay between planned strategies and real-time adaptations, each pivot embracing the original objective of control and protection amid constantly shifting elements. This unexpected twist, while jarring, solidified the team's cohesion, demonstrating their resilience in the face of the unforeseen, turning improvisation into their most powerful asset. Their mission continued with renewed determination and an unwavering commitment to extinguishing the flames against all odds. With determination etched into every movement, the firefighting team surged forward, faced with the daunting task of breaking through a line of scorched debris that barricaded their path to the heart of the danger. The remnants of the building loomed like a forbidding gateway, a tangled mess of twisted metal and burned timber, partially blocking the entryway they needed to access. Tony, leading from the front, directed his team with purposeful gestures, their shared resolve palpable even amidst the cacophony of roaring flames and crackling radios. Using axes and specialized tools, they began to dismantle the obstruction, each swing calculated to mitigate risk while making room for their advance. Every strike sent echoes of steely resolve reverberating through the ranks, an unspoken pledge to push through this literal and symbolic barrier with unwavering courage. Sparks flew and shadows recoiled as the debris slowly gave way, the path ahead revealed in incremental victories against the relentless, fiery backdrop. As the final segments of the barrier were cleared, exposing a narrow passageway into the building's perilous interior, Jamie and Tony exchanged a glance of mutual resolve, a silent affirmation of their shared mission permeating through the smoke-thickened air. Ahead lay a corridor shrouded in darkness and rolling plumes of daunting heat, its walls alive with the flickering dance of flames. Armed with hoses and extinguishers, they entered, their silhouettes cutting through the chaos with a steady gait, like torchbearers charting a course through uncharted night. Step by step, they navigated the hazardous terrain, ears attuned to any telltale creak of instability or signal of distress. The heat pressed down upon them, an oppressive force opposed only by the steady hiss of water turned to steam in its clash against the blaze. In these moments of trial, the team's synchronicity galvanized into an almost kinetic force, spiriting them forward toward the zone where they could make the most impact. Their purpose was clear, their resolve unshakable. This threshold crossed not just into danger, but into the fierce domain where human tenacity and fight against nature's fury coalesced into acts of quiet heroism. Inside the cavernous building, the environment was nothing short of a maelstrom, a hostile landscape sculpted by heat and chaos. The air was thick with smoke, each breath a concerted effort that strained against the claustrophobic weight of countless particles. It clung to their senses, infiltrating even the protective barriers of their masks with an acrid, pervasive intensity. The heat bore down like a relentless adversary, a palpable force that seemed to crawl beneath protective layers and sear against their skin. Visibility was a semblance of blindness, a world shrouded in unpredictable shadows that flickered and danced, shadows animated by the roiling flames consuming the space all around. Echoes of cracking wood and creaking steel filled the air, disorienting them with sounds that seemed to originate from nowhere in particular. Occasionally, a flare of incandescent heat would leap out from the deeper reaches of the flames, momentarily illuminating the chaos in stark, terrifying relief before retracting back into the furnace. Despite the overwhelming conditions, the firefighters pushed forward, the terrain manifesting as a battlefield where every step demanded clarity of focus and rapid adjustments to the ever-changing threats. Beneath their boots, debris shifted ominously, a carpet of unpredictable hazard that turned the footing treacherous at the best of times. Currents of air oscillated between suffocatingly hot and biting with the sting of processed chemicals that had escaped containment, contributing to the eeriness and unpredictability of the environment. Time itself felt warped, suspended within this fervent cauldron where dashes of illumination revealed glimpses of reality swallowed by the blaze. These glimpses were checkpoints, instants of visual confirmation amidst a landscape determined to disguise its true nature. Yet each glimmer of resolve, underlined by the shared mission and visible determination of their teammates, steeled them against the siege of impossibility. No matter the hostility of the setting, it was confronted head-on, the team's spirit undeterred, navigating this sinister bastion with a resolute purpose that, despite any disorientation thrown their way, would not be extinguished. In the heart of the inferno, the firefighting team moved as a single, cohesive unit, the cadence of their actions finely tuned to the demands of the escalating situation. Instinct and strategy interwove seamlessly as they navigated the hazardous interior, each firefighter drawing on their extensive training and innate survival instincts. Tony led with calculated precision, his sharp gaze taking in details amidst the chaos, instantly assessing which tactics to employ and which to abandon. His hand signals communicated efficiently with Jamie, who flanked his side, attuned to the rapid shifts in the environment and simultaneously executing strategic maneuvers based on his lead. Fires flared unpredictably, challenging them to respond with agility and adapt dynamic plans without falter, decisions pivoting on an axis of instinctual reflexes honed by repetition, suddenly operationalized into quick, coordinated action. It was here, within these critical choices, that the essence of their competence shone, illuminated either by the flames directly or the testament of their unwavering focus. Scott, anchoring their rear, coordinated the deployment of hoses with a steady-handed finesse, directing the pressurized streams where they could quell the most destructive tongues of fire. His judgment in those moments wasn't just a byproduct of understanding fluid dynamics. It was a testament to his deep, intuitive grasp of fire behavior, cultivated through years spent on the front line. Meanwhile, Jamie monitored signs of possible structural shifts, continually adjusting their path to circumvent potential collapses, her internal map of the structure perpetually recalibrating to match the pace of their progression through the hostile environment. Each decision they made, whether a calculated risk or an instinctual reaction, was rooted in a profound understanding of both individual roles and collective potential. This intricate dance on the precipice of disaster highlighted their resilience, a testament to a unified sense of purpose and expertise. As they fought through the flames, their confidence was a beacon, guiding them through the fury of fire with competence that, under relentless pressure, declared both their skill and their humanity. Inside the blazing environment, every breath the firefighters drew was a measured struggle against the assault of searing heat and acrid smoke. The air was thick, almost liquid in its intensity, as it clawed its way down their throats and into their lungs, each inhalation turning into an act of defiance against the oppressive atmosphere. Sweat poured in rivulets beneath their heavy gear, mingling with soot and grit on their skin, stinging their eyes and saturating their bodies with a humid, uncomfortable cling. Their gloves were damp, slick against the tools they wielded, adding another layer of challenge as their fingers worked to maintain precision amidst the slipping sensation. Every heartbeat thudded louder than the last, resonating not just in their chests but reverberating through their eardrums, creating a steady rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the relentless drumming of water hitting flame. The physical toll of their environment was relentless, muscles straining and protesting under the combined weight of gear and exhaustion, each motion deliberate yet hindered by the palpable resistance of the surrounding blaze. The rubber soles of their boots contorted, struggling to find purchase on surfaces made deceitfully treacherous by ash and debris. Their vision was a series of fractured marionettes, fragmented and distorted by the haze and glare, in which they had to parse out signals of true direction and danger. The radio chatter, though critical, seemed almost lost amid the cacophony of crackling fire and the pounding of their own adrenaline-fueled pulse. Despite it all, the team persisted, each firefighter separately encapsulated within their own sphere of sensory assault, yet bound by the shared, visceral experience that defined their collective mission. It was the raw physicality under duress that anchored them. Each discomfort, ache, and bead of sweat was a testament to their enduring resolve, propelling them further into the core of their duty, regardless of the strain exacted by the furious elements they confronted. Amidst the swirling haze and chaos of the inferno, the firefighters pressed deeper into the building, their path illuminated only by the flickering flames and the dim beams of their flashlights. As they navigated a particularly treacherous stretch of corridor where the floor sagged ominously beneath layers of ash, Tony's ears tuned to a faint noise almost lost in the ambient roar. A small but persistent sound, like the high-pitched whimpering of an urgent plea. Pausing to listen, his heart skipped as he recognized the unmistakable tone of human desperation. Alerted by newfound concern, he gestured to his team, and together they honed in, following the thread of sound through a series of smoke-thickened twists and turns within the crumbling building. The heat was suffocating, the environment unyielding, but as they reached a collapsed section of wall, the sound crystallized into clear cries for help, escalating the stakes of their mission. Behind the debris, isolated and clutching a handkerchief to his mouth in a futile attempt to ward off the encroaching smoke, was a young man, his eyes wide with fear yet glimmering with hope upon sighting the figures of his rescuers. His clothes stained with soot, he looked like a specter held captive within the fiery tomb, vulnerable to the whims of fate that seemed poised to close in. Tony dropped down beside him, feeling the residual heat radiating from the surrounding walls like a physical barrier, while Jamie positioned herself strategically to oversee their retreat. The young man spoke in a panicked rush, his words punctuated by the crackling sound of the fire encroaching upon their time. "Please, help," he implored, the urgency in his request sharpening the focus of their mission. Every second ticked by with scorching tension, yet the human connection forged in these raw, crucial moments became the flame that fueled their resolve, invigorating their spirits with an unspoken promise to bring him to safety. In lifting him from the oppressive enclosure, Tony and Jamie embodied the bridge between chaos and hope, their determination igniting the path against all adversities as they maneuvered back through the labyrinthine danger toward the distant glimmer of safety. The oppressive urgency of time made itself known with each ominous rumble resonating through the building's weakening structure, a visceral reminder that their window for escape was rapidly closing. The inferno seemed to draw closer, swallowing more of the brittle architecture with every passing second, turning the surroundings into a volatile tableau of swirling chaos. As Tony and Jamie moved with the young man across their shoulder, the heat intensified, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket, each step echoing as a drumbeat counting down the diminishing quiet before potential disaster. Cracks in the walls sliced through the haze, casting jagged shadows that flickered threateningly, marking their path with disruptions stark and unnerving. Around them, the air pulsed with an intensified hum, a thrumming that mirrored the blood rushing in their eardrums, underlining the perilous immediacy of their situation. Jamie's radio crackled to life, the transmission barely cutting through the cacophony with an urgent update: structural integrity failing, evacuation recommended immediately. The words were like daggers, slicing through any lingering uncertainties, honing their focus with razor-sharp clarity. Each word amplified the stakes, underscoring the dread that was materially manifesting all around them. The corridor ahead felt suffocatingly narrow, every unsound creak and splinter warning of the precarious dance they engaged in with the teetering remnants. The young man's weight in their arms was no burden, instead, it became an impetus for rejecting fear and focusing solely on their momentum toward safety. Methodically, instinct and training coalesced, guiding them through a path punctuated by crackling embers and patches of oppressive blackness. The specter of impending collapse loomed large, pushing their discipline to its brink, daring them to falter while simultaneously affirming their strength in unity. As they surged toward the shimmering outline of daylight beyond the smoke's clutches, every muscle burned with exertion, driving them faster toward the hopeful sanctuary of the outside world, a sanctuary teetering on the edge of fading with each tick of their unseen, yet ever-present, clock. As they approached a critical juncture within the perilous maze of smoke and flame, Tony and Jamie faced a harrowing decision point that promised to define their fate. Ahead, their current path diverged into two distinct routes, each fraught with its own hazards and uncertainties. To their left lay a secondary corridor, relatively untouched by flames but densely choked with smoke, offering limited visibility and potentially unseen dangers lurking within its opaque folds. Its promise was the path of less immediate heat, but with concerns about air quality and hidden structural weaknesses, the choice was riddled with unpredictability. To the right, a passage led toward an open area, visibly fire-damaged with unstable debris. The remnants of fallen support beams lay scattered like crucibles of imminent danger ready to collapse with the slightest disturbance. Yet, the faint illumination of natural light from above suggested a more direct route to escape, a beckoning siren call of clarity amidst the searing chaos. Tony paused, his mind racing through the risk-laden calculus of each option. With the young man relying on their guidance, the weight of this high-stakes decision pressed heavily upon him. Breath measured and heart-pounding, Tony exchanged a glance with Jamie, an unspoken inquiry and shared determination etched in their eyes. Their training had prepared them for snap judgments shaped by experience and instinct, yet in this moment, he understood the need for careful deliberation amid urgency. His option-focused mind cycled through each variable: time constraints, air integrity, the stability of surroundings, and proximity to their ultimate goal of escape. He considered their equipment, the young man's condition, and Jamie's strengths alongside his own. With a decisive nod, Tony finally signaled toward the smoky corridor. The calculated risk came from trusting their tenacity over structural uncertainty and betting on their ability to navigate obscured threats using finesse and coordination. As they veered left into the smoky depths, the tension coiled like a spring inside them, each step measured with the abundance of possibility and peril. Together, they ventured towards the diminished yet practical chance for safety, their commitment undeterred by the uncertainty lurking within this chosen path, their shared mission a guiding star through a gauntlet of firelight and shadow. As the smoke thickened around them, Tony's internal compass pointed toward a decision he knew carried the weight of responsibility and the specter of consequence. Though the path through the smoke-filled corridor was treacherous enough, the faint sound of structural groans beyond hinted at another impending threat, a subtle indicator that reinforced the urgency of their situation. Within those moments of tense deliberation, Tony realized another course he must embark upon to ensure the greatest chance for the young man's survival. Turning to Jamie, whom he'd entrusted his life with countless times before, he conveyed a silent resolve through a brief but intense meeting of their eyes. The risk he was about to undertake would mean momentarily diverging from their shared path, a calculated gamble to reinforce their chances of emerging from the ordeal intact. With a reassuring nod and an unspoken hope that came from unity, Tony set his plan into motion, knowing full well the stakes of venturing alone into the fray. Unclipping his backup radio, Tony pressed it into Jamie's hand, his fingers lingering only a moment to communicate both trust and urgency. "I'll draw attention here, set the count and head straight toward the light," he instructed, voice firm yet carrying the underlying tension of the situation. Before Jamie could object, Tony turned with conviction into the corridor of flickering shadows, his form soon obscured by the encompassing miasma. Determination guided him as he moved swiftly down the path opposite their intended exit, knowing the distraction might afford Jamie and the young man a safer passage through the less compromised area. Heightening his presence with deliberate action, Tony used the resounding clang of his axe against metal railing to stir the discordant symphony of fire, a chaotic signal designed to draw the nature of the blaze's attention away from points where his team advanced. Each step taken within those muddied depths was seasoned by a grit whittled from resolve. His gamble was high risk, but building these seconds for others was his ultimate design. As the flames danced a more voracious overture across his path, he held fast with the knowledge that his decision, laced with sacrifice and intent, was taken within the crucible of their shared commitment to duty and life, preserving the hope of tomorrow in the tumultuous embrace of today's challenges. Guided by Tony's signal diversion, Jamie and the young man pressed on through the narrow confines of their chosen escape route, a path fraught with both challenge and possibility. The corridor they entered was a labyrinth of constricted spaces, where fallen beams formed arches that loomed precariously low, and the floor beneath was a patchwork of uneven footing obscured by layers of ash and debris. Each step was meticulously measured, every inch forward a careful battle against the environment's instinctive inclination to betray stability. The walls on either side were a mosaic of compromised surfaces, cracked plaster and exposed brick from which plumes of smoke snaked erratically, devising chimeras of hindrance and danger. What little light permeated the depths flickered inconsistently, a pulsating echo of the blaze that provided both guidance and disorientation as the tumult within conspired to blur their path. Despite the weight of the young man's arm draped across her shoulders, Jamie maneuvered with the skill of seasoned resolve, her movements precise and deliberate as she navigated the treacherous corridor. Her heart thrummed insistently, a fierce counterpoint to the tremors of the building as they reached a particularly narrow passage where the walls seemed to close in an unyielding embrace of decay. Here, the floor fell away steeply, forming a tight chute that plunged into a sheer drop nearly swallowed by darkness. Jamie paused momentarily, assessing the risks, her mind a matrix of calculations balancing speed against safety. The bareness of this passage offered a mercurial promise of rapid egress but at the stealthy price of balance and agility. Grit grating beneath their boots, she instructed the young man to proceed with caution, letting him slide first to ensure stability before following closely, vigilant in anchoring their progression through the dim, deceptive channel. The passage ahead, though fraught with peril, sharpened her determination, an obstacle to overcome on their vital journey as each nerve rang like a finely tuned instrument, harmonizing their survival into the cadence of escape. Bound by Tony's sacrifice and her own tenacity, Jamie guided the escape route with vivid clarity, forging resilience from shadows in their pursuit of salvation. As Jamie and the young man reached the end of the narrow chute, the treacherous incline served as an exhausting reminder of how small margins dictated the stakes. The young man, already fatigued by the harrowing ordeal, stumbled, his foot catching on a protruding piece of rebar that jutted from the floor like a malevolent snare. The sudden falter jarred him off balance, sending a shockwave of dread through Jamie as her hand shot out instinctively, clamping around his arm to steady him. But the jolt of momentum pushed them both dangerously close to the edge, mere inches from a precarious drop into a partially collapsed chamber below, a jarring void outlined by the cruel glow of distant flames. Heart racing, her breath caught as the ground trembled with their weight, every instant stretched and amplified by the vertiginous threat that loomed beneath, threatening to pull them into its unsettling crux. In that moment, time seemed to fragment into shards, every decision rippling with consequence. Bracing against the incline's slippery grasp, Jamie anchored herself firmly, channeling her resolve into strength and clear focus. She whispered urgent, calming words to the young man, forging a fragile lifeline of stability amidst the vertigo-inducing drop. With effort interwoven with calculated precision, she supported him across the slick surface, using the wall as leverage while redirecting their center of gravity back toward secure footing. The precariousness of the situation came into sharp relief, colder sweat mingling with the heat-drawn rivulets beneath her helmet as they made their cautious ascent. Each strained muscle pulsed with intent resilience, legs a chorus of cooperative struggle that echoed with the need for progress. Yet, as they emerged from the immediate threat, reunited with trembling ground beneath their feet, the specter of near defeat lingered, underscoring the fine line between failure and perseverance. It was a poignant testament to their shared ordeal, reminding them of the stakes hanging on every choice, every action, a reminder of the gravity that spurred their ascent toward deliverance. Just as Jamie steadied herself and the young man on the precarious path towards safety, an unexpected voice pierced through the chaotic haze, carrying both relief and urgency. It was Scott, their steadfast ally, calling out from an adjoining corridor. His silhouette emerged amidst the whirling smoke, his flashlight cutting through the gloom with a resolute beam, illuminating not only the path but also the renewed hope it signified. Scott's entrance was timely, a beacon of steadiness amidst the frenetic scene, a testament to the cohesiveness of their team even amidst the sprawling disorder of the fire. With swift, decisive movements, he navigated the corridor toward them, his presence a steady bulwark against the chaos and fatigue that threatened to overwhelm. A rope, looped over his shoulder, hinted at the tangible aid he brought, a promise of reinforced escape committed to the immediacy of their need. Without missing a beat, Scott secured the rope along their path, its length an assurance against the treacherous incline they had just navigated, offering the stability of a lifeline. His arrival ignited a spark of renewed energy and determination within Jamie, the weight of their predicament momentarily relieved by the tangible aid and unwavering solidarity of their teammate. Together, they anchored the young man as he crossed the final stretch of treacherous terrain, forging a resilient bond fortified by mutual trust and camaraderie. In Scott's adept hands, the rope transformed from mere tool to lifeline, guiding them as they maneuvered over the scant, uneasy footholds amid the embers of their surroundings. His steady encouragement dissipated the lingering shadows of trepidation, uniting them in a shared current of resilience. Through the intrepid invocation of teamwork, they forged a path forward, one where the specters of doubt and near defeat fell away in the glow of collective resolve and purpose, a testament not only to skill but to the unwavering bonds of their brotherhood in the perpetual fight against the perils they faced. As Scott, Jamie, and the young man forged ahead, their path illuminated by the clarity of their combined efforts, the corridor's darkness slowly gave way to a burgeoning hint of light. Their synchronized strides propelled them forward, cutting through the dense curtain of smoke and ash with newfound vigor. The glowing outline of an exit emerged in the hazy distance, promising the liberation of the open air beyond the oppressive clutches of the fire. Emboldened by the presence of each other and the tangible lifeline that Scott adeptly managed, they closed the final feet of unknown with every intrepid step, rendering the uncertainty beneath firm resolve. Each breath became palpably lighter, the acrid sting of soot and unforgiving heat fading as daylight beckoned, dancing across their path in tentative embrace. Breaking through the final obstruction, a weakened door that surrendered gratefully to their determined push, they were engulfed in the embrace of the outside world, a symphony of fresh air and sunlight flooding over them. The looming specters of looming disaster receded behind, the building stood crumbling yet harmlessly contained, framed by a disciplined phalanx of firefighters who had meticulously attacked and controlled the blaze. Applause and shouts of relief rose from the gathered crowd and emergency personnel alike, as Jamie and Scott guided the young man into the waiting care of paramedics whose presence symbolized safety and healing. Each heartbeat slowed, every heartbeat a reminder that even under the weight of overwhelming odds, hope could ignite through the synergy of determination and camaraderie. The escape, more than a physical transition across thresholds, embodied the spirit of service, the act of uniting against chaos and affirming resilience where once there had been shadowy doubt, standing as testimony to the essence of duty and courage that burns brightly in the heart of every true rescuer. As they surveyed the scene with the gaze of survivors, the sun bathing their features in a warmth unbound by elemental fire, they transformed from actors on the stage of crisis to emblems of salvation, the weight of victory tempered by the quiet acknowledgement of their shared journey. Once outside, the cool rush of fresh air was almost shocking in its clarity, a vivid contrast to the suffocating inferno they had just escaped. Jamie, Scott, and the young man gasped as the oxygen filled their lungs, reviving senses dulled by smoke and heat. Paramedics swiftly moved in, cradling the young man with reassuring hands, checking vitals with deft precision, as eyes filled with relief lingered on the resilient trio now safely removed from the jaws of the blaze. The young man, shaken but coherent, exchanged a look of gratitude so profound it seemed to communicate the depths of unspoken thankfulness without need for words. Though covered in soot, his chest rose and fell with steadied breaths, each inhalation a testament to life reclaimed from peril, his survival propelled by the indomitable spirit of those who refused to surrender to the chaos. Jamie and Scott staggered to the side, finding temporary solace against the side of a fire truck, their battered bodies relaxing for the first time as the adrenaline ebbed. Their features were marked by exhaustion but adorned with the unspoken pride of triumph. Around them, teammates, those who'd been fighting the blaze from other fronts, converged, offering firm clasps on shoulders and nods of acknowledgement, building a silent tapestry of shared experience and victory hard-earned. In the distance, Tony emerged from another exit, his silhouette framed by dissipating smoke, his presence solidifying the completeness of their unity, their survival. Every breath they took as a cohesive group affirmed not only the tangible preservation of life but also the endowment of camaraderie, a validation of their collective strength. As the chaos around them transformed into an orchestrated calm, punctuated only by the lingering splashes of water quelling ember-laden ruins, the reality of their survival was undeniable. Though scarred by flames and tested by fate, they stood whole, alive, bearers of the enduring truth that even within chaos, hope could forge paths toward salvation, lighting the way with every selfless act of courage. As they settled against the fire truck, the adrenaline that had sustained Jamie and Scott through the throes of danger began to ebb, leaving their bodies to bear the full brunt of exhaustion. Jamie slumped slightly, her muscles trembling as they relinquished their rigid hold against the surge of stress they'd been subjected to. Her heart, having hammered fiercely within her chest throughout the ordeal, now steadied, each slowing beat peeling away layers of anxiety that had coiled within her chest. Her limbs felt weighted, composed of leaden fatigue, barely responding to the commands of her will to stand. In sharp contrast to the roaring inferno they had faced, the silence felt almost too heavy, her ears keenly aware of the stark absence of the chaos that had been their companion. Despite this physical capitulation, Jamie's breaths, deep and aware now of their newfound freedom from smoke, reaffirmed that they had emerged whole from the trial by fire. Nearby, Scott experienced a similar collapse, the minutes of tension finally unraveling to leave a vacuum through which fatigue crashed inward. His hands, reliable and steady in the face of flames, now shook imperceptibly, the release from exertion rendering his fingers momentarily loose and uncontrollable. The jacket that had been an essential bastion held against the blaze now hung heavily, soaked with sweat and the residue of smoke, clinging to muscles both sore and liberated. Each part of his body protested at once, bones heavy with the weariness of a struggle concluded. A wave of light-headedness demanded that he close his eyes momentarily, a respite for senses overwhelmed within the crucible of recent events. Yet, beneath the exhaustion lay the undeniable warmth of accomplishment, the intimate knowledge of survival embraced by his entire being. With every breath drawn and exhaled, Scott's body recognized not just the present triumph over the oppressive flames but celebrated the deeper victory of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure and overcome. As the chaos of the blaze subsided, a profound silence enveloped the scene. It was a silence heavy with the remnants of what had just transpired, thick with the kind of shared understanding that unites those who have gazed into the abyss and emerged on the other side. Jamie and Scott, though physically spent, leaned against the fire truck, absorbing the quiet like a balm for their shredded nerves. Their eyes met briefly, a silent exchange that required no words, a mutual acknowledgement of the shared ordeal that clung to them like the soot on their uniforms. Around them, the landscape remained littered with the echoes of their struggle, burnt rubble, twisted metal, and the faint smell of smoke that lingered stubbornly in the air. Despite their survival, joy was absent. What filled the void was a solemnity drawn from the wisdom of enduring, from the deep-seated empathy found only in the aftermath of shared trauma. Within this silent pocket of time, colleagues drifted around them like ghosts, each carrying the weight of their own experience within the fray. Faces were drawn tight, etched by soot and shadow, testimonies to the battle they'd fought against the fire's relentless appetite. Their usual banter and light chat were replaced by the soft rustling of movements and the gentle clinking of gear being stowed. Jamie glanced at Scott again, saw the exhaustion mirroring her own in the lines of his face. Their weary acknowledgement spoke volumes of an unspoken bond, crafted in defiance of disaster and circumstances beyond their control. Even as they gathered themselves to stand once more, the lingering effects of shared trauma tethered them together. It was a quieter kind of victory, marked not by fanfare or celebration, but by the unyielding strength of their shared resilience, an understanding anchored deep within their collective being, where words dissolved into a profound connection that would, from that day forward, silence their steps as much as it would amplify their actions. The fire truck rumbled through the street, its slow journey back to the station wrapped in an enveloping shroud of silence. Inside, Jamie and her fellow firefighters settled into the worn seats, the rhythmic vibration of the engine beneath them a constant reminder of the transition from chaos to calm. The air, still tinged with the faint smell of smoke, lingered as a testament to the battle they had just waged, a ghostly presence held at bay by the truck's sturdy frame. Each firefighter settled into a kind of self-imposed distance, their eyes reflecting both the flicker of passing streetlights and the internal processing that had just begun. Jamie leaned her head back against the seat, feeling the residual adrenaline ebb away, leaving a curling whisper of exhaustion echoed by the weight of her gear resting heavily on her shoulders. The enormity of the event began to unfurl within her mind's eye, snapshots of shared trials replaying with vivid clarity, flames' furious dance, shadows of danger averted, and the resolute unity forged in that crucible of heat and tension. Scott sat across from her, his eyes fixed on the view outside, yet seeing beyond the cityscape now laid to rest under a night sky. The familiar path home offered a backdrop against which his thoughts wandered across the spectrum of what they'd endured, and the landscape he'd now begun to re-engage with on an emotional level. As the hum of the wheels played a soft percussion against the pavement, Scott's hands lay open in his lap, not yet ready to reattach to any task beyond reflection. The silence that filled the cabin was no longer merely the absence of words, but an active, dynamic space where each member mentally parsed the weight of what had transpired. Every inhale and exhale marked the unflowering of relief, a cautious willingness to pivot from survival mode into processing that was deeply complex, even sacred. As the firehouse loomed into view, its familiar silhouette a comforting guidepost against the monochrome night, they embraced the solace born of silent certitude. For now, theirs was the unspoken acceptance of the intangible process of healing, a gradual reweaving of their inner worlds back into the routine and mundane beneath which resilience had taken root. As the fire truck continued its measured journey back to the station, Jamie found her thoughts punctuated by vivid flashes of recent memories, each image flaring brightly in her mind before fading into the hushed rhythm of the road. The first was the stark, fierce glow of the flames that had seemed to tower like sentinels, standing against the backdrop of a swirling, smoke-filled sky. She could almost feel the heat washing over her again, waves of oppressive warmth that had pressed in on all sides, forcing each breath to be drawn with calculated effort. Another flicker encapsulated the sound of crackling wood and the low moan of bending metal, all underscored by the determined, shouted communication between her and her fellow firefighters. Words given clarity amidst confusion, a chorus of courage against the chaotic roar. In the quiet of her seat, she relived these moments, the flickers of firelight casting shadows that danced across her mind's eye, transforming her heartbeat into a metronome keeping time with each recollection. Scott, too, drifted from the immediate present, finding his imagination steeped in echoes of that shared ordeal. Unbidden, the faces of his teammates came into sharp focus, illuminated against the darkness, each etched with a fierce determination that spoke to their shared resolve. The expressions told a story of unity and sacrifice, an unspoken pact formed in the crucible of confrontation with a blaze that demanded everything and gave nothing. He pictured the narrow escape route, its confines both menacing and reassuring, each step taken with acute awareness of precarious balance, both literal and metaphorical. Scott could even feel the heft of the hose in his hands, the reliable weight that had become an extension of his own willpower, directing torrents of water that pushed back the fire's relentless advance. These mental reverberations sounded louder than the silence of the cabin, whispers of distress and relief, interwoven with the quiet acknowledgement of survival, imprinted deeply and indelibly on the landscape of his thoughts. Within the solitude of these mental interludes, Jamie and Scott found resilience deeply intertwined with remembrance, the echoes gradually quieting as they prepared to reintegrate into the calming routine that beckoned upon their approach to the firehouse. As the fire truck turned the final corner, rolling toward the familiarity of the station, Jamie sat up straighter, an unconscious shift of her posture that spoke volumes about her state of mind. Despite the weight of exhaustion pressing on her limbs, a flicker of resolve ignited within her, a quiet fire kindled in response to a duty not completed but continued. Her eyes, though tired, reflected the determination to embrace whatever the next day might bring, reiterating the unspoken promise she had made long ago to herself and her team. The memories of the day, vivid and raw, wove themselves into her understanding of strength and resilience, forging an unbreakable chain of commitment that linked her to her fellow firefighters. As she alighted from the truck, the cool night air caressing her skin, Jamie felt invigorated by the thought of the cycles of her vocation, the ever-ongoing preparation, the camaraderie of shared mission, the knowledge that behind every pain there lay a purpose fulfilled. Scott, stepping out beside her, mirrored her resolve with his own brand of quiet strength. His gaze swept the firehouse, familiar and reassuring in its solidity, a beacon in the night amidst uncertainty. For him, the resolve to face the challenges of tomorrow was not born from obligation alone, but from a genuine care for the lives and safety of others, such care not easily extinguished by fatigue or hardship. The companions flanking his work underscored the deep sense of connection he felt, a connection that defied the isolation the job sometimes imposed, rendering it instead to a privilege intertwined with the narratives of heroism and humility. As he and Jamie exchanged a knowing glance, there was an unvoiced acknowledgement of the cycles of their roles, the rhythm of response and readiness that defined their daily existence. In the quiet that settled over the station grounds, where the echoes of the handheld radios blended with the crickets' nocturnal songs, their resolve to forward march into tomorrow was a testament to what made them so much more than a team. They were a band of resolute souls, united by an unyielding spirit to protect and serve with every dawn and dusk they faced together. As Jamie and Scott crossed the threshold into the firehouse, the walls encapsulating the echoes of repeated missions past, an undeniable truth settled into their consciousness. Heroism bears a cost, one not easily seen through the grandeur of bright jackets and flashing lights. It comes wrapped in moments of doubt, in the heaviness that tugs at weary bones, speaks of sacrifices silently made, and in the distance that sometimes wedges itself between one call to action and the next. Heroism, they understood, is woven not from the singular moments of triumph that flicker in the public's eye but from the quiet acts of perseverance that happen in the shadows beyond. The fire they faced today was but the latest chapter in a story filled with endurance and a willingness to step into chaos, not for glory, but because it was the unequivocal call of conscience. With every fire suppressed, and every life saved, they chipped away at a debt of duty, a covenant that demanded from their very souls resilience and compassion intrinsic to their way of life. Yet, amidst these sacrifices, they gleaned a profound emotional truth. The bonds forged in these crucibles were gifts that transcended the physical tolls exacted. Heroism was rooted less in acts of bravado and more in the tapestry woven with every entwined thread of kinship found in communal struggle and unwavering support. The cost of heroism was steep, filled with the aches and challenges that marked their resilience, but it was also a beacon of hope, a guiding light that increased in brightness with each challenge faced and each lesson learned from their experiences. Jamie and Scott, standing amidst the familiarity of their home base, shared unspoken gratitude for this truth, an acknowledgement that their burden was shared, not individually shouldered. The cost of their heroism was offset by the strength, understanding, and unwavering belief in the sanctity of life and the duty to protect it. What they paid in those depths was returned 100-fold through camaraderie, healing, and the indelible imprints of service. As they prepared to rest, the weight of their contribution felt lighter, embraced by the acknowledgement that echoes of heroism are not measured by the flames extinguished, but by the lives touched and the love carried within. As the first light of dawn began to stain the horizon with hues of soft amber, casting a gentle glow over the firehouse, Jamie stirred from the brief rest she had managed to grasp. The night's events lingered in her mind, like a whisper on repeat, yet her spirit felt anything but diminished. Rising slowly, she stretched, each movement accompanied by a sense of readiness that belied the fatigue woven into her muscles. Despite the exhaustion, there was a rekindled strength within, a resolve that coursed through her veins, reminding her that each new day presented another opportunity to protect, serve, and save. The station slowly came to life around her, familiar sounds of rustling uniforms, clattering dishes, and the chatter of early morning conversations creating a reassuring symphony of routine. Each firefighter preparing for the day carried within them that same determination, a quiet acknowledgement embedded in their shared purpose, to face whatever challenges the world chose to lay at their feet, knowing they would meet it with courage and camaraderie. Scott joined Jamie gradually, his own fatigue cloaked in a renewed sense of duty that had been carved from the crucible of the previous night. There was an unspoken bond etched into their early morning nods, a connection that needed no verbal affirmation to bind them to the day's tasks. As he adjusted his gear and checked the trucks with methodical precision, Scott's thoughts drifted towards the inevitable call of the sirens, the closing of the garage doors, and the rumble of the engines that would signal their next mission. It was not a matter of if, but when the next challenge would arise. Yet, this certainty did nothing to erode his resolve, rather it fortified his sense of purpose with each breath drawn into lungs ready to push beyond the bounds of fatigue and into realms of bravery and compassion. Jamie and Scott, along with their teammates, embraced the rising day with open eyes and open hearts. They were armed with the knowledge that their resolve to face whatever tomorrow brought would be as unyielding and steadfast as it had been today, embodying every lesson learned and every life touched by the warm, enduring spirit of their shared commitment to each other and to the world outside their doors. As the sun climbed higher, casting light upon the firehouse and its weary yet resolute occupants, an underlying truth became quietly evident: heroism is a path paved with both sacrifice and profound significance. The cost, often overlooked amidst the allure of dramatic rescues and split-second decisions, lay in the moments that followed, in the early hours after flames had been subdued and lives safeguarded. Jamie understood these weights intimately, knowing that the exhaustion embedded in her muscles, the echoes of the night's chaos lingering in her mind, were not merely physical burdens but emblematic of a deeper investment in humanity. Each call to action threaded the fibers of her resolve tighter, crafting a tapestry rich with compassion that was built upon enduring empathy and unyielding determination. Heroism demanded vulnerability. embracing fear, overcoming doubts, and finding unwavering strength in the knowledge that behind each risk lay an even greater purpose, the safeguarding of life itself. Scott, too, reflected on this price, how each experience carved into the essence of his being a new layer of understanding and humility. It wasn't just the exhaustion after a long night or the silent grappling with the images that lingered longer than anticipated. The real cost of heroism nestled within the interconnected veins of community and service. It was the weight on his shoulders when he returned home to those who awaited him, the unspoken acknowledgement of sacrifices shared by loved ones, the promise he made every time he donned his gear. Yet through these silent costs came a radiant gratitude, a recognition that the acts of heroism weren't solitary endeavors. They were embedded in the bonds forged in the fire's crucible, in the camaraderie that assured him he was never alone. Heroism, Scott understood, was not just about bravery in moments of crisis but about the invisible dividends it paid in connection, clarity, and the enriched knowledge that each life touched and saved was worth every ounce of struggle faced. In the light of a new day, Scott and Jamie accepted these truths, wearing their heroism with quiet pride and an unwavering belief in the duty that defined them, warehouses of resilience ready to face the relentless cycles of challenge and triumph yet to come.